Today, we are grabbing an ancient text, Psalm 89 actually, and using it as a mirror. We're reflecting on something pretty tough. What happens when reality just seems to completely contradict the promises you've been holding on to? Welcome to the deep dive. We're focusing entirely on this single psalm today, attributed to Ethan the Ezrahite. And it's kind of a radical blueprint for faith. It kicks off with incredible praise, total confidence, but then it pivots dramatically into some really raw, painful questioning. So our mission here is to unpack this blueprint, see if we can pull out some wisdom for strengthening your own trust, especially when things feel like they're collapsing around you. Now, to really feel the impact of the conflict later on, we need to start where Ethan starts, right at the peak of celebration. The first part, maybe verses 1 through 18, it's just pure, soaring worship. He's singing about God's mercy, God's faithfulness.
Right. And he declares this love isn't temporary, it's eternal. Established, as he says, in the very heavens. It's foundational.
It really sets a high bar from the outset.
It does. And it's essential groundwork. Before Ethan gets to any complaints, he anchors everything in God's just sheer, unequaled power and reliability. He asks, who in the heaven can be compared unto Lord? He talks about God ruling the raging sea, founding the earth.
Yeah.
It's all about sovereign power.
Yeah, the kind of power that can absolutely deliver on a promise. It establishes God as not just capable, but fundamentally reliable. Justice and judgment are the bedrock.
Exactly. And that reliability leads straight into the theological core of the whole psalm. This eternal covenant God swore with King David, that's the middle section, roughly verses 19 to 37. God promises David his line, his seed, and his throne will last forever.
And the language there, it's not just strong, it's like cosmic, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
God swears the throne will endure as the sun before me. It's meant to sound as permanent as, well, the sun. This isn't some flimsy agreement. It's anchored in God's own character.
Okay, so if the promise is basically etched into the fabric of the universe, built to last like the sun, how could anything make the psalmist doubt it? What's the catch?
Well, the catch isn't in God's promise. It's in human behavior. And this is really key for you to grasp. The text actually anticipates failure. God explicitly says if David's descendants ditch the law, break the rules, they will face consequences, painful ones. God will visit their transgression with the rod. That part's conditional.
Right, there are consequences for actions.
Yes, but, and this is the critical part, the promise itself holds firm even through the punishment. God says, nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. So the punishment might come if they disobey, but that ultimate covenant love, the commitment to David's line, that's unconditional. God punishes the failure, but doesn't scrap the eternal promise.
Wow, okay, so the promise runs deeper than obedience or failure in the moment. But then, this is what makes the psalm so jarring. Right after this declaration of unbreakable commitment, the text just slams into a wall, like zero transition. It's a sudden, catastrophic shift.
It's exactly right. Around verse 38, the tone just flips violently. And the psalmist isn't just asking a hesitant question. He's stating the cold, hard facts he sees.
He's basically saying, God seems to have done the exact opposite of what was just promised. The anointed king, the heir to this eternal throne, seems cast off, rejected. The covenant looks void. The crown's been thrown down. Enemies are celebrating. It's ruin.
Yeah, this is likely reflecting a real national disaster for ancient Israel. Maybe defeat, maybe the lead up to exile when the Davidic line was, for all intents and purposes, finished. Imagine holding this scroll with its eternal promise while you're literally looking at a ruined kingdom and an empty throne. The contradiction couldn't be more stark. It's physical.
And his complaint is devastating because he throws God's own words back, asking essentially, where is that faithfulness you swore to David? It's a direct challenge, right? Based on God's own commitment.
It is. And that's what lifts this beyond just simple despair or whining. The psalm ends still in that tension. He's pleading, how long, Lord, will you hide yourself forever?
He doesn't try to resolve the contradiction neatly. He sort of forces the tension back onto God.
But it doesn't end in just, giving up. There's that final, almost paradoxical affirmation, blessed be the Lord forevermore. Amen and amen. That whole structure, the praise, the promise, the painful honesty, the final blessing, it really models the full spectrum of faith when things fall apart.
So, okay, we've got this ancient wrestling match laid out. But how does this actually help us today when our own lives, or maybe movements we care about, look nothing like the promises or hopes we had? Where's the anchor?
But what's so powerful here is that the psalm teaches that real faith doesn't mean avoiding conflict. It means being willing to wrestle right in the middle of it. It gives permission to acknowledge that huge, painful gap between the promise you believe in and the hardship you're actually experiencing.
But is just holding on to the promise while staring at disaster. Isn't that just a kind of denial? How does this psalm actually help build resilience instead of just like ignoring the facts?
That's a great question. It's not denial, because the very act of lamenting, of voicing that disappointment to God, is itself an act of profound faith. Think about it. You wouldn't bother complaining, you wouldn't feel the sting of that contradiction unless you fundamentally believed the promise was real and the promiser should be faithful.
Ah, okay. So the complaint itself comes from a place of belief.
Precisely. And resilience is built right into the psalm's structure. Notice how the psalmist makes himself and us start by remembering God's past faithfulness, God's power, detailing the promise before he even gets to the pain. That memory acts as an anchor. It stops the complaint from just spiraling into pure despair.
Right. So remembering isn't just nostalgia. It's like gathering evidence against your current fear. It's saying, okay, things look bad now, but God's faithfulness is bigger than this moment. Trusting it runs deeper than what I can see right now.
You got it. It affirms that God's character, God's love and justice, they endure beyond these temporary, however painful, setbacks.
Okay, let's bring this home. We all face this, don't we? When our expectations, maybe for our career or health or seeing justice happen, just don't line up with reality. You can feel personally cast off, a bit like that king in the psalm.
Absolutely. And this text offers a really crucial insight for managing those expectations. See, many people get into trouble spiritually because they mix up conditional blessings like, if you do X, Y might happen with the unconditional identity of God as faithful. So when a conditional blessing doesn't come through, they think the whole foundation of God's faithfulness is shaky.
I see the distinction.
Psalm 89 gives us permission, even courage, to confront God with that contradiction, to name the broken dream, the disappointment, but to do it while still holding on to that fundamental hope in God's character. It teaches you how to hold two seemingly opposing things at once. One, the situation is terrible and unfair right now, and two, God is still faithful, even if I can't see how right now.
So, thinking about resilience, whether it's getting through personal stuff or sticking with long-term fights for change, this psalm shows how to balance the grief, the lament, with that underlying trust. It's not about getting quick answers. It's about enduring within the tension.
That's the heart of it. Strengthening that relationship with God means we have to be honest about the pain. We have to name it when things don't look right. But we do that while, at the same time, affirming God's fundamental love and faithfulness. Learning to say, "Blessed be the Lord forevermore," not because the problem magically vanished, but because God's core nature is trustworthy, regardless of the immediate evidence.
So the big takeaway seems to be that faith isn't about never having doubts or pain. It's actually the commitment to keep remembering the promise, even while you're standing right in the middle of the hardship. It gives us permission to be brutally honest, even angry with God, and somehow still end in praise.
Exactly. This ancient wisdom offers a path. It invites that radical honesty alongside an enduring hope. It suggests that bringing our pain to the promise is actually how deep trust is built.
Which leads us to the final thought for you, the listener, today. Given all this, how will you apply this information in your life?